Hello, my petals. Today I wanted to explore a metaphor that I absolutely adore and that I frequently use within my client sessions. This is actually a concept that was from a dear friend of mine, a beautiful soul sister, and the moment she shared it with me, I just had to laugh because it was just echoing so deeply within my own being, and since then it stayed with me. So sometimes, we just hear those things that are so simple and somehow still make perfect sense. They illuminate so many patterns that we see within ourselves and also within others, within the people around us. Before we go deeper within the session, I just wanted to add this small disclaimer, which is something that I always like to do or like to say when we're talking about any type of archetypal work. And it is that any type of archetypal framework is an oversimplification of reality. We are talking about stereotypes, about archetypes, and it is just, a very oversimplification of things. As humans, we are so much more complex, and also we may shift depending on which environment we are in, depending on which relationship we are in, and depending on the season of life that we are currently moving through. Sometimes we are a cactus, sometimes we are a basil, and maybe sometimes we are a complete chameleon, just switching from one to the other and adapting to our environment. So, this isn't about placing ourselves in a fixed category. It is simply the invitation of utilizing this as a lens, as a way of noticing patterns that may be present in our life. And sometimes just noticing can already help us and support us shift something. So the question is simple. Are you a cactus or are you a basil? Right, let me explain because this probably makes no sense to you right now. Have you ever bought a basil plant? Like, have you ever gone to the shops and to the supermarket and just grabbed a basil plant, right, in a little pot? Initially, it looks beautiful, it's green, it's fresh, it's alive, it's like just all like happy, and you place it in your kitchen or maybe by a windowsill. And for a little moment, everything looks absolutely perfect. It's like so like juicy and healthy. But actually, basil is quite delicate. It's quite susceptible to its environment. A little bit too much sun one day and the leaf starts burning. You forget to water it for one day and suddenly the entire plant looks like it's collapsing, it's dying. The leaves are flopping dramatically. So you walk into the kitchen and you immediately notice something is wrong. Because the basil just tells you very clearly, very visibly, its needs are expressed, in that so external way. Its needs are expressed in that external way. Its distress is expressed in that external way. Everything that is coming up and it is within the realm of like emotions, especially like unpleasant, but also like really pleasant, is visible from that external point of view, from that external lens. So the moment something in the environment is slightly off, the whole plant communicates that signal with us. And there is no guessing, there is no analyzing. The basil will just let you know. And there are people that move through the world in a very similar way. People that, move through life in a very similar way. Their emotional landscape is super visible. When something is not right, you can see it like straight away. When they're hurting, you know. And when the environment change, the signals appear really quickly. So for the basils, the system really expresses its needs. Like the basil just expresses whatever is going on within their emotional landscape. So sometimes those people can be described as sensitive or overly sensitive. Sometimes they're being called emotional, in a non-positive way often. But actually there is also a lot of deep intelligence within that system because the signals appear really early. And so the body communicates even before the system is depleted. So as soon as like there is this alarm that is going off, there is like this expression. So with the basil, there is not the chance of, waiting for the roots to run dry. So when we're talking about the basil archetype, the challenge is not expression. Expression is present. But maybe for the Basil, the journey is a little bit more about learning a little bit more resilience. Because when every little small changes within the environment create such a strong response, life can feel so overwhelming. And so their nervous system may really rely on that outside world for regulation, for validation, for reassurance. That reassurance that someone is going to come and water them or move them away from the too sunny windowsill. So the path for the Basil is often learning how to build that inner steadiness, to build more of like that inner strength, learning how to stay with the feelings but without collapsing, learning how to regulate the nervous system from within. And yeah, learning that not every shift in the environment equals crisis, but it is bringing in information. But information and crisis can be really different from each other. So now talking about the cactus archetype. So the cactus moves to the world in a very different way. The cactus can really endure. You forget to water it for a week and it looks exactly the same. 2 weeks passes, still the same. A month passes, still the same. So from the outside, everything appears really stable. Strong, maybe unbothered or even a little bit cold, but definitely independent and self-sufficient. But actually, internally, the system may be slowly depleting. So from the outside, we don't see things, but from the inside, the reality is very different. Because the cactus does it holds, it manages. So often people within the cactus archetype are perceived as incredibly resilient. They are the strong ones, the dependable ones, the one who can handle things. They are, the one that you call when things get rough or when there is a crisis. And very often that resilience was developed from a very early age based on family dynamics because the environment just required it. So perhaps there has been in those cactus archetype, in the way that they grew up, there has been no space to express needs. Perhaps there has been just the responsibilities came on really early, and within their family dynamics, within their childhood, they were expected from an early age on to take on responsibility. Perhaps being strong was the safest way for them to move through the system. So the cactus learns to endure. But the challenge is that the signals remain internally for a very long time, but those needs are really felt still. It isn't that the cactus is emotionally disconnected. So there are all of those feelings, however, there is very little expression. So discomfort is tolerated, boundaries appear really late. And sometimes when, it's that system final stop, it explodes or it stops completely. Not because the cactus is weak, but because it has been holding on to things quietly for far too long. And this is, I think, where this metaphor becomes quite personal for me. So for myself, when I heard this the first time, I just recognized myself immediately. So historically, I have very much been a cactus. For a long time, for the majority of my life, I would even say, the storms in my life were happening internally. Inside, there was so much movement, so much processing, sometimes quite a lot of turmoil. But from the outside, it looked like I had everything together. In my family, I was always qualified as the strong one, the capable one, the one that would handle things, the one that was just all right. I would just be fine. And because I appeared all right, I was often the one that people would check in on the least, the one that was left a little bit aside, the one that wouldn't get the extra care. So I was, the one that received the least care, not because people didn't care about me, even if we can talk about the fact that there was still some crunchy bits there and there was also both way responsibility here, but because also the signals that I was sending was that I didn't need it. Yeah, I was fine. For a long time, for me, there was resentment in that. There was a quiet sense, and sometimes a really loud sense actually, of being overlooked. of holding everything together was secretly, internally wishing someone would notice just how much I was struggling, just how much I was drowning. But at some point in my life, I also had to take responsibility for my part in that dynamic, because the truth was that I was rarely ever shown any vulnerability. It was so rare for me to allow myself to ask for help, to voice any level of discomfort or distress or grief. So there is a process here as well of, yeah, like in that dynamic, that was also my part to play. And there was a lot of work for me that needed to be done around expression. A lot of throat chakra work had to happen, but also a lot of softening of the heart, because I think being in that over independence for so long, I also had hardened. I had created like more boundaries around my heart, and those walls that I had built needed to slowly come down, so that I could allow myself again to be more open-hearted, and then to be able to express whatever was happening within my system, whatever was happening within my heart space. And learning really that it was safe to say that things were difficult for me, or that I needed support in this or that. And yeah, somewhere along the way, my internal system started to rebalance a little bit, and then to rebalance more. And so today I still have cactus tendencies, and that part of me is still there. But also now it acts as like a reminder to continue to soften, a reminder to express sooner, to let people see what is actually happening internally before my complete system reaches exhaustion. And this is really where this metaphor, I think, becomes helpful, because it's not about deciding that one archetype is better than the other. There is absolutely no judgment here. And it is not also about judging ourselves. And it is definitely not as well about forcing ourselves and reshaping ourselves outside of a category, or, forcing ourselves into a specific category. Human beings are just a little bit more fluent in that. And as I mentioned earlier, you may also connect with one or the other archetype more depending on which relationship you are in. Maybe in your romantic relationship, you are more in that Basil archetype, or with your family, because of like the dynamics, you are a little bit more in the cactus. So sometimes we are Basil, sometimes we are Cactus, sometimes, we are adapting to what is happening within our environment. But I also truly think that at the core of us, we are connecting more deeply with one or the other archetype. So here, my invitation to you is not to change, but to simply notice the pattern. And if you recognize yourself as the cactus archetype, the path may be to learn how to express your needs earlier, to learn how to be more vulnerable, to learn how to reach out before your system gets into complete exhaustion or complete burnout, or before you have those explosions because your boundaries have been crossed for so long. And if you recognize yourself as more of the Basil archetype, the path may look different. For you, it may be more about learning how to build more resilience, learning how to self-regulate, learning how to offer yourself that steadiness, to offer that steadiness to your nervous system without needing the outside world to immediately come and fix the discomfort. And I truly believe that balance lives somewhere in between. Somewhere where we do not collapse the moment the soil becomes slightly dry, but also somewhere where we do not wait until the roots are completely depleted before responding. So I want to leave you just with this small reflection today. In your life right now, where do you recognize those Basil patterns? And where do you recognize the cactus patterns? And maybe when I'm describing those, you also recognize some people in your life, and this is helping you to inform more about your relationship, and maybe also about the elements that are needed here. Not as judgment, simply as information. because the work is really about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who we are underneath the trauma, underneath the coping mechanisms, underneath the adaptations and the masks that we had to put on to survive our environment or to flourish within different environments. For me, the work is often about learning to listen sooner, to respond sooner, to care for the system before the leaves are actually burning and long before the roots run dry. And so for me, it's really this invitation for you to sit with this and to maybe be able to see yourself or your loved ones into that slightly different perspective. And maybe it will give you some breadcrumbs to follow into what could be beneficial for you to reach a little bit more balance. Thank you so much for listening today, and I see you in the next episode. Bye, petals.